We have 4 cruise news stories for you today. There is a fire aboard a major cruise line. Cunard is celebrating a record-breaking season after the arrival of their new Queen Anne. Hurricane season is here, and Carnival Cruise Lines has put out some very interesting information to let us know what to do when there is a hurricane, but not from the perspective of the cruise passenger, but from the perspective of the cruise lines. Extremely interesting. And one San Diego company is celebrating 30 years, and the gift that they're giving is an all-expense-paid cruise for all of their employees. We've got a lot of cruise news to discuss. Let's swan dive right into it. Hello, everyone. It's Cynthia, your host. Welcome back to today's show. We're starting off today's show with MSC Cruise Lines. We're headed over to the MSC Armonia, where it was reported on Monday, June 10th, that a small fire broke out aboard the ship. Now, as you know, fire is one of the worst things that could possibly happen aboard a cruise ship. So I'm happy to report this is a positive story. It has a good ending. Well, let's get into it. Very early Monday morning, there was a smoke alarm detected aboard the MSC Armonia as it was pulling into Venice, Italy for their port stop. As soon as the crew were alerted to the smoke alarm going off, they jumped into action very quickly, and the crew were able to put the fire out with a fire extinguisher, and they also evacuated the nearby area of the laundry facility. During the time that this electrical fire broke out, no one was inside of that laundry facility, although it is noted to be the main facility, the main laundry facility on board the ship. It has been stated that there was never a time where any guests were in danger, and there was no alert for any passengers to go to their muster station. MSC issued a statement letting the passengers know that around 6:30 a.m. Monday morning, there was a small electrical fire. It was contained, put out. There has been no damage reported, and there was no danger to any of the passenger or any of the crew. Authorities, of course, were alerted, as the protocols go if something like that happens, right there in Venice, and the fire brigade team did arrive aboard the ship to check it out and make sure that everything was safe. There were no smoke inhalation or burn injuries of any kind, and that the ship itself was stable enough to go right ahead and cruise. And it was noted that there was no problem whatsoever, and the ship did continue on with its regularly scheduled cruising. The Armonia is a Lyrica class ship, and it is able to hold just over 2,600 guests. We are very excited to hear that there were no injuries, and the ship is in good mechanical condition to continue on with the scheduled cruise. There will be a full investigation to determine the cause of that fire. Have any of you sailed on the MSC Armonia? And if you have, please let us know your thoughts about that ship in the comments below. Our next story takes us over to Cunard, and we're talking about that brand new Queen Anne ship that launched back in May of this year. I told you the story about the new ship coming out for Cunard, and it had been a while since Cunard had put out a new ship. And there was a big naming ceremony that went on there in Liverpool. And because of the hype for this brand new ship coming out for Cunard, there were more bookings in May after the Queen Anne was launched. This surge of bookings took place, and Cunard states there were more guest bookings with Cunard in May than in any equivalent period on record. So the hype for this brand new ship really caught on, and there was this big surge in bookings for Cunard on the Queen Anne. Katie McAllister, who is the president of Cunard, said that they're delighted to see such strong booking momentum in response to the successful launch of the Queen Anne. So they have something to celebrate. But not only that, it was also announced Cunard's 2025 event voyages. What are event voyages? These are voyages which will include 7 themed sailings aboard Queen Mary II, Queen Elizabeth, and Queen Victoria. During these sailings, they will have experts on board, and things will range from gastronomy to music to the arts to dancing. I am going to put the list up here so that you can take a look to see what will be available for the 2025 event sailings aboard Cunard. Have any of you sailed aboard Cunard before? I am interested to know. There is a possibility that we will be sailing aboard Cunard very soon. So I would love to hear your comments about this cruise line. Please let us know in the comments below. If I ask you what is the first thought that comes to your mind, if I say the months of June through November, would you say, oh, that's the beginning of summer heading into the fall? Oh, that's my favorite time of year. Oh, that's warmer temperatures and then plummeting to colder temperatures. It probably would be something maybe along those lines. But this story is all about hurricane season, June through November. This story takes us over to Carnival Cruise Lines. And it's not about Carnival Cruise Lines in particular, but they gave us a behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to run a cruise line during hurricane season. I have definitely shared before, I think on this video here, about great cruise rates that you can get during hurricane season. And I said for you guys, don't come at me and say you're crazy. It's just because of the time frame, they offer some better rates to get people to still cruise during this season. John Held, who is the ambassador there for Carnival Cruise Lines, states that the cruise industry uses a range of tools and a bunch of different resources to make sure that they're up to date on all the weather happenings and that they're ready to keep an eye on every ship, all the guests, and all the crew members to make sure that they are safe during this time. He goes on to say that, well, Carnival Cruise Lines, but all cruise lines have all the tools that they need to make sure that they can look and see where any tropical storm is developing, where that storm might be going, and what the projected track of that storm is likely to be. The Fleet Operations Center, where all of this takes place, is manned 24/7 for this very instance. They have a team of experienced sailors, men and women who stay in constant contact with the fleet, and also navigators that this is their very job. Cruise lines are in constant communication with the National Hurricane Center, the U.S. Coast Guard, and of course, local weather people in that area to make sure that they are up to date on the latest information. So let's say we've decided to take my really good advice and go on a cruise during the months of June through November, and a storm does threaten. The Fleet Operations Center and Carnival Cruise Lines, and of course I'm using Carnival as the example because it was John Held, but all cruise lines are going to do something very similar. But the Fleet Operations Center and Carnival Cruise Lines executives, they're going to talk about this and discuss it with each individual ship captain to determine what the sailing conditions are and use that information for any itinerary considerations or changes. As you can probably imagine, a decision to change the itinerary is not taken lightly. They understand aboard the cruise lines that many of us have taken this particular cruise because of that very itinerary. So to change it, like right before you get there, or let's say even worse, while you're already on board, well, it's a big decision to make. And sometimes there is just not the opportunity to let guests know beforehand, of course, that there might need to be an itinerary change because weather, as we all know, changes frequently. Carnival recommends that you always make sure that you have that hub app available on so that you can receive any updates or text messages or changes as soon as possible. And of course, on board the ship, they will then announce whatever change might happen. So now John Held walks us through the rest of the process. There is a hurricane or a tropical storm. There is some type of weather that the ship needs to move and make a different, itinerary change. It has to avoid that storm. So they have now decided that there needs to be a shift and there's going to be an itinerary change. So here's the next step. And these next steps happen very quickly. The original port of call where the ship was going to go, well, it has to be notified. After that, the ship will either slow or completely alter their course, whatever they need to do to remain safe and avoid that storm. Now, an alternate port of call needs to be examined, and then it needs to be contacted to attempt to secure some type of berth space on that specific day that the ship will now arrive. Alternatively, if there is no berth space and they don't have a nearby location to go to, the ship might just make it an additional sea day. If there is a new port available, well, now it's time for the shore excursion team to contact that port to try to set up new shore excursions. Of course, this will depend on the number of tour companies that are there and how many other ships may be in the port at that same time. But of course, they're going to do their very best to offer guests some type of, wonderful activities to have once you arrive. Now, here comes the interesting part, if that wasn't already interesting, that I had never thought about. Next, Carnival will need to rearrange flights and transportation for any of their crew members who might have been leaving the ship or joining the ship at that port of call. There might need to be additional travel adjustments made for any fly-on entertainers or comedians, magicians, or any other headliners that might have been boarding the ship at that port of call. Department managers will now organize new schedules for the crew members to account for different times in the port and different times that the staff would have changed shifts. Now, the cruise director and the entertainment team, they'll need to get together and design a new Fun Times newsletter and, of course, update the Carnival Hub app or whatever a ship or company that you might be on, their means of communicating with their passengers, that now needs to be updated. Now, during this time, guests will then be notified via text messages or the app or whatever type of system that they have on board of these itinerary changes. This is the point where guests will either be, accepting of it and understand, I might not like it, but this is for our safety and this is the best course of action. But there are definitely some other passengers that John Held mentions who are not very accepting and they're quite angry. And I mean, with the scheme of things, you can understand if you were looking forward to a specific port and then at the very last minute you find out you're not going there. Yeah, frustration could set in. You just have to take a minute and think about the reason why. But some guests are very upset about it, and then they're down there at the front desk looking for compensation and demanding what's going on. And all of the times, compensation is not necessarily given. If we ever sit down and read all of that cruise contract, we would see that they don't have to compensate us if they need to make a change to keep us safe because of the weather. John Held welcome comments and questions and concerns on the very popular Carnival Facebook page that he runs. So if you'd like to get in touch with John Held and give him a piece of your mind or ask a question or give him some kudos, take a look at that Facebook page. Have you ever been aboard a ship? Last minute, they changed the schedule on you for something like the weather. We definitely have. It's happened and it is frustrating. They did the absolute best that they could do. And, we still had a super great time. Most of us say that a bad day on a cruise ship is still better than a day at home. I don't know if you agree with me, but cruising is something that we adore doing. And there's hiccups, just like with anything else in life. Sometimes things happen that you don't love, but, in the scheme of things, we all want to remain safe during hurricane season. Let me know if you've ever experienced anything like this. I'd love to hear it down in the comments below. Our final cruise news story is such a happy, exciting story, and I hope my employer is listening to this one. But before I get there, I'm taking this opportunity to invite you to subscribe to the channel. Right Recipe for Travel is boldly going forward. We're looking to have 10,000 subscribers before middle July, so I've got just a little over a month. That would be a great birthday present for me. So if you like what you see, please do tap down on that subscribe button. We would love to have you as part of the Right Recipe for Travel family. Also, please do give us a like and tap down on that notification bell to be notified when new videos are dropped. Let's move on to this great birthday celebration cruising story. Our next story takes us to, San Diego, and I'm not quite sure what cruise line, but here's the story. There is a company there in San Diego called PPI, Pacific Precision Instruments. They are celebrating their 30th birthday, and the company states that they started this business in their garage. PPI is an engineering firm and they build in-flight entertainment for aircraft. The owners of PPI decided that their 30th birthday celebration should really be something special. And they were quoted as saying, they started this business out of their home and it's a passion for them. And they've had the opportunity to hire really great people. And some of them have been with them nearly the entire time. One of the people interviewed in this story, they stated that they have been there for 16 years. Their mother also works for the company. Mom's been there for 25 years. And the dad also works for the company. And dad has been there for 20 years. So they wanted to do something really special for the 30th birthday. And here is what they did. They have given all 30 of their employees an all expense paid, inclusive 7-day Caribbean cruise. This cruise is for the employee plus one. And then if that employee has children, they have some special discounts for any children that also might want to come along. Wow, I think that's super. I've had some really good gifts from my employer over the years, but none like that. I would like to know, how about you? Has anyone ever had some really great gifts, something along this lines? Or have you ever been gifted a cruise by your employer? Very nice. Well, that is it for the cruise news today. I thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you at the next adventure.